Okay, let's go ahead and get started on this one. It's asking us to find the x and y intercept for this equation. Now your teacher's going to want you to write in this a pair of coordinate points, which is what is going on here, okay? Don't just write x is 2. It's not going to fly. So to figure out what the x and y intercept is, your teacher might have told you that you would cover one of them up. So like for instance, I'm going to cross that out so you can cover up that with your hand, and then they say divide. And then they do the opposite. They flip it and they cover up the other one. Say, okay, divide that. So if your teacher's done that and you know how to do it, great. Do it that way. You should get the same answer. I'm going to show you how to do it plugging in 0. Just because I do it one way doesn't mean you have to do it my way. Okay? You have to do your teacher's way. If I show you a different way and you like it better, do it my way. As long as you're doing it correct, you should be good. So in this case, we're going to get fractions. Now, as far as I would think, you're on your test, you might not get one with fractions. I don't think the teacher's that cool. So if I'm going to find the x-intercept, I let y equal 0. You let the opposite one be 0. Okay? So I have negative 6x, it stays, plus 3 times 0, plug it in 0, equals negative 14. Now I got to get x by itself. So 3 times 0 is 0, disappears. Negative 6x equals negative 14. That's where that covering one of them up and dividing comes from, because right now what we're about to do, divide. So divide by negative 6. And with x is equal to this, I have a negative over negative, so that's going to become a positive, and I can reduce this by 2. So divide them both by 2. I end up with 7 over 3. So yeah, it's not a fraction. I don't want to graph that. Thank goodness we don't have to. So I need to write this for the x-intercept, 7 over 3, comma 0, because that's what the point is. So let's keep going. We're going to do the y-intercept now. So the y-intercept, I obviously let x equal 0, the opposite one, and I have negative 6 times 0 plus 3y equals negative 14. Now negative 6 times 0 is going to become 0, and so I get 3y equals negative 14. Now I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides of the equation. Y equals negative 14 over 3. I cannot reduce that one bit. So I go back up here and I'm going to plug in that for my intercept. I'm going to get 0, negative 14 over 3. Okay? And I'm done with this problem. Just because I got fractions as answers doesn't mean that there's something wrong with this problem. You might get that. How you know you won't get fractions in your answers is I've seen teachers, usually if they don't want you to get fractions, they're going to give you something nice, like this one. What do we notice? Well, what's 3 times 5? 15. So in this case, the two numbers multiply to go multiply together to get the last one. Okay? That or they might both go into the number. It might be a very large number that they both divide nice and evenly into. So if you see something like this, or for instance, let's say 4x plus 3x, sorry, 3y equals negative 12. Same deal. Where 3 times 4 is 12. It doesn't matter the negative, positive, minus, plus. But that they're going to give you nice whole numbers. In this case, 6 times 3 is 18. It's not 14, so there's no way we're going to get that. We're always going to get fractions. So if you get any of these two on your test, those are the nice and easy ones, okay? We have one of those later on in this review, so we'll see it when we get to it. Let's scroll on down. Alright, so this is saying list the ordered pairs corresponding to the points of the graph. Well, as far as I know, your teacher might give you a set of points and then ask you, is this a function? Or tell me what's the domain and range. So you might not have a graph to look at, but if we get the points, we're going to do the same thing. So in this case, if I look at A is over here, okay? And that's going to be at negative 4, and it goes up to 3. So A is negative 4, 3. B is going to be 7, negative 2. And then C is negative 1, 5. And D is 4, negative 5. Now, the domain and range. The domain in this house, because X comes first and D comes first in the alphabet, the domain is going to be all your X values. Now, none of them repeat, so I'm going to write them out in order of smallest to largest. And as you know, the bigger the number when it's negative, the smaller it is. That's why I start with negative 4. Now, some teachers don't care about this if it's in order or not. Some do. you know which one you have, if your teacher cares or not. So domain is the x, range is the y. Obviously, it's what's left over. So plug in my y, starting with the smallest, -5, -2, 3, 5. Okay. So there we go. That's my domain and range. Now I notice in my range and in my domain, I don't have any of the same numbers repeat. Because if that happens in the domain, in your x's, then you know it's not a function. So I'm going to use the vertical line test, if I can just look at it, to determine whether it's a function. The vertical line test is if I can go on my graph and I can draw a line through anywhere my function is, and if I hit the same point twice, I'm sorry, not the same point, if I hit points in that line twice, okay, and we have examples later, this might make sense. It's not a function. That doesn't happen here. Every one of these lines just has 1 point. So yes, it is a function. Okay? And again, it's because if you notice, none of these x's are the same. Yeah, you have 2 4s, but they're not both negative or positive. Let's look at the next one. This one is one where I'll tell you right away does not pass that vertical line test. You might see that looking at A and B. But they're right on top of it. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. List out A and B. Well, A is going to be at the point 3, comma 3. And B is at the point 3, comma 1. You see that x is repeated. C is at -1, comma 6. And D is at -6, comma -2. Now, domain and range. So again, my D, my domain. Alright, I'm going to start at -6, because that's my smallest number, and then do -1, and then 3. I only have to write it once. Don't write it twice. You don't have to, okay? If you do that, your teacher's going to mark that wrong. They're going to see that you're not noticing that you only have 1 3. You're going to write it once, okay? And then you have 2 of them in the problem. Just repeat the number once. The range is -2, 1, 3, 6. Now notice right away I got 4 numbers here and I got 3 numbers there. That's telling me something's off. That's another way we will know it's not a function, okay? You see here that these 3s are the same, and again if I go and draw a vertical line right here, boom! I hit 2 of them, here and here. And again, not a function because of that. Okay? Alright. This next one has a graph. It says use vertical line test to determine whether it's a function. And if it is, we're going to state the domain and range. So in this case, I can sit here and go through this and go there. And notice I'm never hitting the graph itself more than 1 time whenever I do that. It might look like I am, but I'm really not. This graph is constantly moving in between the points. Maybe you're thinking, well, in between my, -3, -2 looks like 2 are, but I'm not, okay? So, in this case, this does pass the vertical line test. It is a function. I'm going to erase all this. So, yes. Now we have to state the domain and range. So, I'm going to list all of the domain and all the range that it goes through. Well, really what I want to do is just list the range of numbers. So your teacher might have done this, where it's going to be from this number to this number. So if I look at my graph, and I told my students in the review to draw a box, let's make it easier. Box in your function, okay? As neatly as possible. That's the best with that. Now, where are the corners of your boxes? Well, the x's, okay, this corner is at -1, and this corner is at 7, -7. That's my domain. My domain goes from -7 to -1. You always start with the smaller side. So I can write it like that. If you're not sure if you've done this in class, then the other option would be to list out all the numbers that it goes between, which would be everything in between -7 and -1, you see on the graph. So that's one way to do it if you're not 100% on how to do the first one. Now, I look at my y, so I'm looking at the up and down. So, where does it start on the y? Well, right here, this is -1, and it goes all the way up to 8. So it encompasses all these numbers from -1 to 8, but only those numbers. It doesn't encompass anything else, it stops. This is my domain and range for this graph, okay? So make sure that whenever you're doing this, you know how to either do it the long way, like that, or you can do it the way that I showed you. It depends on what you've gone over in class and what you have on your computer. Pay attention to that, and that's the way that your teacher is going to want you to do it. So stop this video here and pick back up with the next problem.